So Pastor Heather talks about how we want our groups to be relational and transformational. In other words, we want them to be about community, and we want them to be about discipleship or helping people to grow to become more like Christ. But there's a third thing that we want NCC small groups to embody, and that's what we want them to be missional. If we look at the life of Jesus, we see that he came to earth with a mission. He came to reconcile us to God, to restore us to right relationship with our Father, the Creator. And we see that he also, throughout his ministry, cared about the spiritual and physical needs of the people that he came into contact with. Whether it was comforting and challenging the woman at the well, whether it was feeding the 5,000 or healing the blind, Jesus met the tangible needs that were right in front of him. You know, in Matthew 25, Jesus talks about how if we bring someone a cup of water, or we, feed the hungry, we visit the sick and imprisoned, that we're actually doing it for him. That when we serve those around us who are in need, that we are directly serving him. And one of the interesting things about this is that he doesn't tell us, we should write a check to an organization that helps so-and-so, or that, we should support the homeless shelter or something like that. He actually tells us that we need to get involved in the grit and the grime and the difficulty of people's lives. I mean, think about it. One of the things that he says is invite the poor wanderer into your house. Like, he doesn't want us to just keep people at arm's length and serve them out here, but he wants us to invite them into our lives and to enter into theirs. So what does this mean for our small groups? Honestly, I used to really hate the idea that, we would want our small groups to serve. Before I came on staff at NCC, I was a small group leader. And it was like, man, I really don't want just like one more thing every month that my small group has to be involved with or has to do. But what I've realized since then is two things. One is that living missionally and living on mission is not about a service project. It's not about doing something once a month, but it's about a lifestyle. It's about just living a life where we're intentionally loving those around us and helping them understand who Jesus is through our actions. And two, that if I am in relationships where I'm discipling people, where I have influence with them, then it's my responsibility to help them understand this mission that Jesus has called us to be a part of. And so if I'm leading a small group, I've got to help the people in that group catch the same vision that God has given me to love and serve others. Practically speaking, what does this look like? How do you do this? I think there's a variety of ways that you can get involved. And, I say it's not about a service project, but honestly, it often starts with something like that. For me, sort of my first exposure to this was a short-term missions team that I was a part of when I was in high school. And it opened my eyes to needs that were in the city, things that I had never come in contact with. And then, through some relationships that I had in college, that grew even more. And then I started leading some short-term missions teams when I was in college. And then I moved to the city. I moved to Washington, D.C., and I didn't do anything. And I realized how hard this was to live out in real life. And it took a long time for me to get it. And it took a long time for me to continue growing in this and for God to continue working on my heart. And I met some guys who were living on the streets and actually developed relationships with them and got to know them. And, eventually came to a point where some of them have actually stayed with my wife and I for a period of time. It's about entering into people's lives and inviting them into ours, but it's often going to start with a first step. It's going to start with taking your group to a second Saturday serve, about helping out with in-service, about going on a short-term mission together. What is Christ calling you to do, considering the passions that you have and the people who he has called you to and the people that he has placed around you? And how can you get your group involved with that?